Greg Medford from Medford Knife and MKT USA. And now, ASK Knives. Stands for the American Service Knife. You can go over to asknife.com, ASKKNIFE.com, if you'd like to see what we're up to. You can also pre-order the knives. We have a little pre-launch going on right now. So for anybody who wants to get in on the American Service Knife, we've got some available over the next few months. So when you turn on a project like this, you start with the materials that you know and you use every day, and then you kind of graduate. So a lot of times, if it's going to be a different product, you kind of work your way into that final product. So before we got a bunch of new magnet cut and started going at it, we used S35, which we're super familiar with, to put together the concept of the knife, to start building the tools and the processes and get it all together. So after much ado, we have finally arrived at a really cool knife, the American Service Knife. So it's a 2-layer, 1/8-inch thick tools, titanium liner, injection molded handles done here in Scottsdale. Hardware is done in Florida out of titanium. The back strap springs are always out of the same material as the blades and tools. This first batch of knives are all S35 VN. They will be graduating to magnet cut. The reason why we did that is we're real familiar with S35 and how it's going to thermally distort and how it acts. So we wanted to get rid of that variable and come up with a process. And once we have a process, we knew we could shift over to magnet cut, and we would have to learn the material a little bit. But we didn't want to be learning the material kind of material science properties of a new metal while we were trying to come up with the processes, because it's really expensive coming up with processes. I probably have, I'd say, I don't know, I don't think it's any exaggeration to say we've got about $1 million or $1.5 million into kind of launching this product. It's a lot of time, energy, and effort to develop something like this. We're jumping into a segment that has a major international manufacturer who's been playing in that space for almost 150 years. And they know what they're doing, and they make a really good product. So we didn't just want to show up with another product. We didn't want to show up with a subpar product. We wanted to show up with something that was on par or comparable to a company that's been around for a century and a half, and bring something new to the table. So the biggest thing about the knife, you'll notice, is that it's got hardware on it, and it can be taken apart like high-end knives can be. These counter pockets in the plastic injection molded handles that these titanium hardware heads sink down into on both sides, the plastic has to be at a slight angle so it can relieve from the mold. So the titanium hardware has got a slight angle, so it's got almost a vacuum press fit as it sucks down into the plastic. Hardware is all titanium. It's a Chicago style bolt, so the pivot is titanium all the way through, and the 6-gun top is connected to that. And then the, I believe it's a number 23 Torx on the top, is just a screw that goes into that, sandwiching them together. Talk about the handles just a little bit. You'll see on the outside, it's got the crest from my parent company, Medford Knife and Tool. It's got the crest. ASK is a completely separate and different company. It's made in a different part of the building, and it's got different personnel coming to life, different staffing coming to life. A lot of us Medford folks are supporting that while it comes to life, but as it comes more to life, it will have its own unique staff as well. So we've got the parent company shield, and in the middle of it, you'll see a musket and a hammer. 250 years at work and at war, disrupting the world with freedom. You're welcome. It's kind of the motto. On the other side, at the bottom, it has a Betsy Ross flag. And you'll see in this knife so much Americanism, traditionalism, colonial, kind of sentimental Americana in some of the symbology around the knife. When you open it up, you take the handle scales off. When you look on the inside of them, you'll find a bunch of little surprises I left for you tinkerers. Now, these knives are constructed with liners. You'll see this knife has 3 liners. It's got a liner inside each handle, and it's got a skeletonized liner in the middle. Now, the skeletonized liner is called such because there's no top of it here. The side handles go all the way around. You'll see all the way around the outside edge. You could see them all the way around the knife. But you'll see that the middle liner is skeletonized. It comes around, and then it goes around and disappears to the inside to leave you some room for the internal cavity between the handle slabs. Let me open it up, and I'll show you what I mean for those of you who don't find that abundantly clear. So if we look down into the knife, you'll see there's one of the liners, there's the other liner, and the central one is cut away. So you'll see it down in there, but it doesn't stick up, and that gives us some room. Now, these pieces are all titanium. Most companies just stamp it out of some unfinished aluminum. We did it out of titanium. We want it to be anti-corrosive, and we want it to be really strong, provide a stiff foundation for a really strong handle over many years of use. Now, the springs and the blades on this knife are always going to be of a matching steel. Now, there'll be a little bit, we may have some extra bottle openers of a S35 VN that maybe make it into the first run of Magna Cut knives. But when you see our phase 1 launch partners, that's DLT Trading, Blade HQ, and Smoky Mountain Knife Works, when you see them get these knives, they're actually going to have the Magna Cut version of the knife. We have to start somewhere, and we didn't want to do everything new all at once. So we used S35 to do these pre-batch of knives, and it's somewhere between 500 and 1,000 knives. So I've put them up for sale. We're going to sell them internally, and the reason we're going to sell them is we want them out in the wild. I don't want to just foist a bunch of these knives onto my launch partners and other dealers around the country. That's somebody and their family's money tied up in merchandise that we make, and I'm launching a new product. It's not my job. It's not their job to launch my product. It's my job. So what I'm doing with these pre-release models is we want to get them out in the wild to market influencers, to reviewers, to people who've got a bunch of followers and want to show it. We want to get it in some professionals' hands for use, and we want them to kind of get some of their own, some legs and recognition in the marketplace. We want them to get that before Jason and Jacob and Tyler, before they put their family and their company's money into a bunch of these models sitting on their shelf. I want pre-work. I want people to know about the product and get it out there. So that's part of the process. You guys don't see a company launch from scratch into full production very often. It's pretty rare. And we're giving you a chance to buy pre-production knives. These are not seconds. They're not scraps. They don't have anything wrong with them. They're fucking lovely. But they're of S35 instead of Magna Cut, and we're letting you jump on them. It does two things. One, it kind of kickstarts a little cash into the enterprise and getting it moving, which they're already all in play. But it's just, we got to turn on accounting. We got to figure out how to process through a different set of books, a whole different system, new people. So we launch a few hundred of these, and it gives us a chance to build our internal system structure and kind of logistical functioning of the company. In addition to all that, we got to package them. They go in some pretty slick packaging. Down inside of here, there's some ephemera with instructions and care and maintenance. Everywhere on this box, there's cool stuff to be found. Even inside the box when you open up, it's pretty cool. So there's just a lot to it. So just how a restaurant maybe does a soft opening, we're doing a pre-launch of the knife. Now, what do you get when you do this? You get a weight. We don't have any quick tickle your balls. You got to just wait. Screws have gotten slowed down. Steel deliveries have gotten slowed down. Everybody's, even if they've kept their companies going, their employees are quarantining. If their second cousin's neighbor got COVID, so people normally get sick all the time. Now you've got people who are staying home who might get sick. And so it's just jamming the world up. And because of that, our launch date of January 1st was pushed to first quarter, and we're barely going to make it because people who were normally 30 days have turned into 120 or 180 day fulfillment. That's a raw material supply. You know what one of the biggest delays was color. You can get plastic, you can't get the color for the plastic, for the handles. The steel, we got the steel out of Niagara Specialty Metals. These are CPM steels only. So this first batch is S35. The final production that when you see hit the streets and end up in our resellers' hands with our phase 1 launch partners, that'll all be magnet cut. So, and while that's going on, we're doing the material science research, process development, processability research, and prototyping with magnet cut to make sure we can pull it off well. Now, when you buy these from me, this first go round, they'll be S35 VN, and you'll fucking love them. They're fantastic. The knives have got a half stop, so they've got some lovely, if you listen, let me see, I don't want to jam myself up. So let's close the blade. So half stop, full stop. I'm just getting a question, is COVID slowing the delivery of my standard blades? You know what? It's slowing it a little bit because I've got people in my team who get exposed to somebody who sat in the third pew at church last Sunday, and they take a few days off work to be safe. And I don't agree with it, but I'm not being draconian about it. I'm letting people kind of find their own rhythm and space about it. But yeah, it's causing delays everywhere. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So the other unique thing you're going to find about this knife's not a gimmick. It's meant to be a real tool. All the materials being out of 1/8 inch. Now we're going to do some 16th inch tools, so you'll have a dual tool that can slide into an 1/8 inch slot at some point in the future. But let me tell you about that. What you get is you get a knife that's got a lot of use thinking behind it, as opposed to just pure tradition or ease of opening. So I think about, on the first knife, our Jefferson, this is a Jefferson I'm holding, I think about primarily cutting, prying, scraping, screwing stuff, and I think that for me, the thing I wanted is less is more. I want fewer tools, but stuff that I can kind of adapt and improvise with really well. So to put this, it's actually a chisel. It can be used as a little bit of a pry bar, but it's a little pocket knife. But could you pry open? Could you jimmy open a slider window in a pickup truck with it if you're a cop? Probably. Can you pry open stuff? Yeah, you can. Would I do lots of heavy duty? Would I pry open a small safe in a drug bust if I was with the ATF? No, I'd get an AIO for that because we've done that before. It's a small framed little pocket knife that fits in your hand. It disappears in your hand. Got tools sticking out of it. But I'm always thinking about scraping. I got some little paint on the tile. I spotted walking down the hallway. I go get a thing. I walk by it 4 months waiting for the time I've got the tool in my hand. Now I just open my pocket up, give it a little scrape. Or around a door hinge. Or I've got a door that's hitting a little bit and I've got a screwdriver on my office desk, but I got to go find a chisel someplace. I'll literally open up. I fixed a door with one the other day. I opened the hinge up. I just took the chisel, shaved a little off one side, screwed it back down. I was like, oh, sweet, I didn't have to go anywhere. They're real tools. And you'll notice I put them aft of center line. So if you push on them, now a bottle opener, you're not likely to push hard this direction with because you're prying into the lock stop, right? But if you're using the screwdriver or you're doing some prying with the screwdriver like guys are off to do, I wanted to put the pressure point behind center into the lock. So, you don't screw stuff really fast with these. They're you're not going to put in 12 screws on a door or a frame. They make tools for that. But if you've got one that you need to tighten that's vibrated loose on your motorcycle or on your boat, you've got a light that's wiggled loose, you could break out your little tool and you could tighten this. And what's nice about it, sometimes screws are right up against, so you can get in here and kind of torque it down better because it's right up against something. It's close to a flange or it's close to a bar or a mounting flange on a boat, a rail that the screws come loose. So you can get in here and kind of tighten this up and kind of torque it. And if you need to, you can bend it to the half stop and then you can really get some force on it even though it's a small tool. And it's out in front of the tool instead of being under, so you won't be hitting this. Now, that also means if you're pushing or whatever, it's not going to want to close on you. Now, Talk about the close a little bit. Magnet cut models are the same cost. All of these have what is called pre-release. Now, I did this, man, a lot of iterations to get here, a lot of experimenting, a lot of playing with feel. And you'll see on this tool, the chisel, it's slightly aft of center so that it lines into the spring. If you are putting some heavy duty force forward, it's less inclined to want to close. But it's got some pre-release. You can see right there, a little bit of pre-release. And then I put a little cam in there. So if you look, see if I can show you guys. If you look on the back, you see that little bump right there? That little bump is a little cam lobe, and it catches on the inside edge of the backlock spring. So when you go to close it, instead of it just smoothly closing, it feels like it's gonna break, and then it hits a hard bump, and it takes 7 times the close pressure to overcome that cam. I measured it a bunch of times. It takes 7 or 8 times the close force required to just start having it close. And the reason I did that is if you're using the tool and you start using it at an angle and you start to use it in the failed direction, one, your hand and your brain are going to feel it start to give and you'll readjust. And two, if you are pushing really hard, it hits up against that lobe and it's got a bunch of resistance right there. So it gives you a 1 degree little lock zone where the tool is reasonably locked out pretty nicely. And then you have to do a big boo-boo to overcome that. Now, there's never an emergency to close your knife. So if you find that you can't take one finger and close, you just switch it around and close it like so. And the shorter tools, obviously, they have less leverage. They take a little more energy to close. But you get a really positive out and locked feel from the tools. Now, aesthetically, you got to get used to the fact it's a little bit off center, and you just got to know why. When you know why, you go, oh, okay, I get that. Talk about the bottle opener screwdriver, okay? The bottle opener screwdriver, the screwdriver is pretty self-explanatory. The bottle opener was a lot of work. Getting the bottle opener right, because I hate getting a bottle opener out and having it slide off 3 or 4 times where I got to move to the side, kind of partially. I want one click, boom, bottle comes off, and this works really well. So to take a tool that's been around a long time that is mostly very mediocre and make it better, it really requires, nope, that's not right, guys. Let's try this, tighten this, put a little thing here, change the angle, open that up, close this off. Let's put a little bend. I want to put a little hook right here. And I got them, I drove everyone batshit crazy over the bottle opener, and we finally have a bottle opener. I mean, finally. You guys will be like, oh, Medford, of course, made a bottle opener is no problem. Opening a bottle is no problem, but doing it really well and elegantly, that's something else, and it took a bunch of work. So for me, it was a big deal to make a bottle opener better. So really nice bottle opener, and then you'll see we also put range-finding reticles in the bottle opener on several of the other models. Now inside the chisel, you'll see a 1/4 inch hex. You can grab a 1/4 inch bolt with that, flip it over for tightening, this way for loosening. And it's also got a tapered grabber. So my dad and I are working on our airplane. We got an old 1976 KCAB Citabria. And we've got the Citabria wing laid out. And we did this Millman aluminum spar mod in the wing. And we want to use as much of the original hardware putting it back together. While we were taking it apart, it had some knurled brass nuts. The brass nuts had been kind of hogged over and rounded off. And my dad was like, God damn it, I can't get a tool to grab onto those. And I grabbed the prototype one of these out. I slid it on. They said, oh, you got to be kidding me. And I slid it on, and these little grabber teeth just grabbed it, and we just unscrewed it off. I was like all tickled inside because I just conceptualized this tapered grabber. And this hole is actually quite expensive to make with a wire EDM and cut that out. And to have it actually work, I was tickled beyond what makes sense because I had a lot of skin in the game. Let's talk about the knife for a minute. The blade itself, it's a hollow ground knife. Now these first knives are mostly going to be hand ground. And the production knives will be production ground. We're still turning that technology on here in the shop. We've got the spear point on the first model. This is called the Jefferson. It's our grabber orange signature model knife. And the reason we called it the Jefferson, so a little break, overcome the cam, nice click into the half stop for safety so it doesn't come around and nail nick you. And then you bring it around for close. It's got a beautiful snap shut. We didn't use a kicker on it. We used the stop pin. I think a kicker is old-fashioned technology. Nothing wrong with it. I think it's old-fashioned. I think it's cheaper. I also think it's not as good. You can close on it and you can force the blade to hit a backstop and put a flat spot on your razor edge. So I think a stop pin is more precision. I think it's better. It's better technology. It's more modern, and I use it. It's a little more expensive, but it gets me an exact stop point for the blade as opposed to a squishy stop point that a user can squeeze the blade down and hit the edge against the backspacer spring. This knife is usable, and at an 1/8 inch thick, it's actually pretty tough. It's actually a knife. It's a knife. It's not a little multi-tool with a compromise. It's a bitchin' piece of American material. They're $240. You can go over to asknife.com. ASKKNIFE. ASKNIFE. ASK Knives. ASK Knife. ASKK Knives. Any combination will get you over there. Zip through, you can buy one of the first 4 runs of the knife. Let me tell you the overarching thing about the company. We have 4 models. They all have different tools in them. So this is the Jefferson. Next is the Washington. Now the Washington, it has a different blade and it has a different tool in it. The tool is an M4 scraper, named after General George Washington, the first soldier and general of the Continental Army. It's got a rangefinder bottle opener, and it's got our monotanto. Why do I call it a monotanto? Because it's a tanto shape. We wanted it to have the strong tip of a tanto. We did our waterfall grind, which doesn't contour at the end. It leaves some pretty thick steel at the tip. And then we bring it to a razor's edge by angling the micro bevel. What that gets you, those of you who are knife makers already know this, but those of you who don't know, it gets you a really strong tip. Now, why did we make this the soldier's knife in OD green? Why? Because a lot of military guys and gals, soldiers, use their knives improvisationally because they're out in the field with limited resources. They can't just go back to the big toolbox in the garage. They do a lot of scraping, a lot of prying, a lot of poking, and a lot of this kind of stuff. So we wanted, and they like tantos because of their strong tip. We wanted to give them a tanto with a strong tip, but with a simple grind. So it's got a simple grind, strong tip. We call it our Magnus grind. It's got a rangefinder out to 400 yards. You hold this with a stiff arm, steady arm on a wall, post, or one of your friends. And this little hole is a 6-foot-tall man at 600 yards from top to bottom. I mean, at 400 yards. At 300 yards, it's the second hole. 200 yards, and at 100 yards, a man right here. So 400, 300, 200, and 100 yards. A 6-foot-tall man will go from top to bottom in a large hole. It actually works really well. It's surprising. You go practice out on your street in front of your house and you have a good time with it. Have your kid, get your rangefinder out and have your kid go down at 100 yards. And maybe they need a 6-foot-tall stick with them. And then we put an M4 bolt scraper on it. So it's getting in all the little nooks and crannies on the bolt that soldiers spend so much time scrubbing and cleaning on. And of course it's green to go with our attire. So a really cool knife called the Washington. Now, if you order one of these in our pre-release version of the knife, we were planning on doing first quarter Jefferson, second quarter Washington, third quarter Ironside, fourth quarter Alcaceae. That's all gotten shifted because of COVID. This knife's been in launch for a long time and everything's gotten jammed up because of it. I mean, I've got a magnetic separator that I use on one of the machines. It normally takes a week to get. It's a 3-month lead time. I mean, machines out of people don't think about this, but my machines need support stuff to make my machines run. Well, magnets are taking 3 months to get. Bolts are taking a month to get. Replacement controllers with computer chips take six months to get. Anyway, that's the Washington. Now, this was going to be released second quarter. It's probably pushed to quarter. And if you order one, we have a very limited amount of these you can pre-order. Sometime in second or third quarter, you'll get one of these. They're just, everything's kind of delayed back a little bit. Let's go to the third one. The third knife in our chain with the same Betsy Ross flag. It's got the same hammer and musket logo, titanium hardware, titanium liners. This one's called the Ironside. Why is it called the Ironside? It's named after the USS Constitution, Old Ironside. American ingenuity, American toughness, the projection of American power, the spirit of the adventure, where a young lieutenant with no radio could make a call that would change the course of the world. And the president, Thomas Jefferson, found out about it a year later. We changed trade in the Mediterranean. We changed homage and bribery that had been paid to pirates for 400 or 500 years. We changed the slavery of sailors who were pressed into slavery under Arab rule of North Africa and the Barbary Coast pirates. All by a lieutenant who made the call and with a few pieces of gold raised himself a small mercenary army to go fight the first Barbary Pirate Coast War. The founding of the Marine Corps and the Ironsides was spectator to it all and took part in it. We thought the spirit of adventure, seamanship, air power, and getting it done, we thought it would be a perfectly fitting name for the third knife in our series. We have it in Corsair Blue. It has a bottle opener on it. Now look, the bottle opener you see, bottle opener screwdriver here, this one doesn't have the rangefinder, but it will. We also have a 6 blade. Now, I thought it was the perfect blade of ancient seafarers. Your Vikings, it's the preferred blade profile and design for Vikings. It's from their part of the world. So I thought it would be great to put that on our American seafaring and voyaging knife. Also on this knife, there's a Zeus fastener quarter turn. For those of you who've been around aviation or boats, Zeus fasteners are round heads with a slot in them. You can put a quarter into them, or you can put a Zeus driver, and you can quarter turn access panels open and closed on airplanes and boats. Every Cessna has got Zeus fasteners on the cowling. It's got Zeus inspection panels on the wing. Most airplanes have got some inspection panels back on the fuselage, and you can get in here with this. It's pretty cool. It's got a quarter 3/16 wrench on it, and an adventurer's blade, and a rangefinder / bottle opener, pry bar / screwdriver. It's a really neat knife with a lot of features. Less is more, but real usable tools that'd be in your pocket. Now, this was scheduled for third quarter launch. It's probably going to be fourth quarter or maybe first quarter of 2023. Just unless the world pulls its head out of its ass and we hear a big collective aha. Let's go to the last knife in our series, our launch series of 4 knives. I think you guys will really like this. This is the knife that comes in high-vis orange. Now, if you look at the base model of our knife, the base model of our knife is this grabber orange. I picked this orange because it reminds me, and it is close to the cars, the muscle cars, and Americana I fell in love when I was a kid. It's 1970s Ford Mustang grabber orange. And this is high-vis safety orange. Now, talk about this knife. This is called the Alcaceae. It was named after, so I went with one of the great minds of the New World. And then I went with the father of our nation. And then I went with some of our industry and technology, our first naval vessel. And then I wanted to go with somebody patriotic and local, and I came up with William Alcaceae. William Alcaceae was a White River Apache Nation Indian scout from Arizona. That's up around Winslow, Arizona, and he had worked with the Army during the Indian Wars, and he had been part of the peace talks with Geronimo, and had been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his bravery and his loyalty on the battlefield. He was spoken of so highly by his superiors and American counterparts that he worked with. They said he was loyal as an Irish hound. They said he was statuesque and muscle and sinew, and he got a Congressional Medal of Honor for it. I thought it would be great to honor him with the knife, and especially since he's an Arizona kid. Now, when you look at our knife, you'll see it's got a kind of distinctive tombstone design at the end. I did that because Tombstone, Arizona is a famous place from my home state. When I travel around the world, everyone always asks me about the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. So I gave it a tombstone shape. I gave it some patriotic Americana names. I made this knife, and we've designed it to be personalizable and modular and flexible more than any other knife in the world. It's meant to be taken apart and made your way. You want it left-handed, you want it right-handed, you want it this way, you want it that way. You can order the tools and swap them out. You can change the blades. A couple other things you could do. Let me finish telling you about the Alcaceae. Since this is named after a scout, we put an awl on it for improvisational stitching and such. It's got a little tiny screwdriver at the end if you need to. Bottle opener. And it's got a really utilitarian Wharncliffe style blade. Same as everything else. Titanium liners, titanium hardware, American injection molded plastic handles made in Scottsdale, Arizona. The titanium liners are stamped here in Chandler, Arizona. The steel's made in Niagara, New York. Rochester, Niagara, up around that area. Everything has been heat treated here in our shop, ground here in our shop, formed and cut here in our shop. The large Blanchard grinding on the plates has been done in New York and in Southern California. And it's not a Swiss Army knife. It's an American service knife. You can take it apart and put the tools for your craft on it. You want the gun tools, you want survival tools, you want golf tools, you want bicycle tools. You can put whatever you want into it. One other thing you can do, which is kind of fun, you can take this knife and you can buy the Shore hardware kit and turn it into a single stack. So this was an Ironside, and we just took it. I put a standard blade in it and knocked it down to single thickness with a window breaker lanyard on it. So you can make a single layer out of your double layer. And you can also take your double layer and you can make it a triple layer. When you order the triple layer kit, you get longer pivots. You get longer pins, which go on the inside. You got a stop pin and a main frame pivot pin. You get an extra spring, and you get an extra liner. It's a lot, and then you have to buy what goes in the pocket if you want to do a third layer. So you want to buy 2 more tools. You want to put another blade in it. What if you want to put 3 blades in your knife? You could put 3 blades in there. It'd be kind of cool. I'm looking forward to see all the crazy ideas and creativity that you guys bring to the table and post. Now, guys say, oh, I don't want this, or I don't want that, or I want this, or I want that. You can make it any way you want. You can take it apart. You can have the scales made any way you want. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put the blueprint for the handles online so that the pimper and aftermarket guys, if you want one made out of frozen duck scrotum that's been stabilized, you can have the handles made out of that too. Now, guys asked me a bunch of questions. Is there going to be a clip? Yes, there is going to be a clip. The clip is being made now. The clip, actually, it's a deep pocket carry clip. It mounts on the hole in the center of that hardware. And one of these 6-gun holes is a square bottom instead of a divot. And it indexes there, screws in here. We're hoping this works out. So clip is one of the very next tools that's coming on board. We've got our golf tools coming on board. We've got some bicycle tools coming on board. We've got some cigar stuff coming on board. We've got a lot of little innovative things. Now, guys asked me about 3 things. One, are you going to have a saw? The answer is not right away. 2, are you going to have scissors? Yes, but not right away. And 3, are you going to have a hex driver? And the answer is, it's my next tool. So, and are you going to have pliers? So I have 2 things that I want to bring to the table next with the knife. I want to bring our hex, and I want to bring a really sound set of electrician's pliers. So you can strip wire and cut wire, all the little shit that you encounter when you're out tinkering around in life. So we'll have that done. You know, I motorcycle and I fly airplanes, so I always see stuff in my hobbies. I'm like, oh, I wish I had a thing for that. The scissors, I know everyone loves the idea of the scissors, and I'll get around to them, but scissors are a real big, expensive bugaboo, and I don't know how much I want to divert my attention with that. It's going to cost me about $1 million to bring scissor technology into the company. So I'm going to do it. It's just not the top thing on my priority, because the truth is, if you've got a great razor sharp knife that holds the edge well, you can pretty much cut everything you need to cut. I know there are spots where scissors work better, but I can't do all things at once. They've been at it for 150 years. I've been at it for a month, a couple years. So I want to do the hex and I want to do the pliers. I think those are a couple of the most usable things. And I guess and then the hex, the pliers, scissors, saw, and then we'll start doing some modified handles where we can sneak some stuff in there. But we're going to do some things you haven't seen before. In addition to some of those things you may have some expectations for. Okay? So, pretty cool. I hope you guys like it. So, this is completely modular. It can be upgraded subsequently. Yes. See, this base 4 chassis we're making, you can take it apart and swap around completely. Almost infinitely. I tried writing down the permutations, and there was just too goddamn many of them. It just goes on and on and on. It's crazy. But I think some people carry a primary knife, and they're not going to maybe carry the knife for their. They're not going to carry it for the blade. They may want 6 tools in it. Some people are going to say, I want all blades in it. I don't carry a knife, but I want one for whittling, and I like one for this. And they'll be able to do that. I think some guys are just going to love the form factor, being able to make it into a single solitary blade. So I see it being used so many different ways. It's really exciting and fun for me. We've had no end of fun, and every time we start talking, I go, what about this with that? And Eric, oh, Greg, stop. We can't do that. Shush, shush, shush. Anyways, you can go to ASKKnife, KNIFE.com. ASKKNIFE. That's 2 Ks or 1. Or knives, or knife, ASKNIFE or ASKKNIFE. However you like, you can get over there. Can you explain the rifle bolt cleaning tool? I can a little bit. Let me put this stuff back where it was when I got it. Yeah. So if you need to be explained this, you may never have cleaned an AR style bolt before, but the main bolt, when it comes out, it's got a tube down through the center. You can slide this onto the tube and go around in a circle and clean all that carbon out with it. You can get on the outside, scrape down the profile. You can get where it builds up around the gas rings. So you've got a scraper here. You've got a scraper here. You've got a scraper here. This radius, all for different little parts. And then this will get in the individual flutes on the outside of the bolt where it locks. All right, you guys, people ask me about this project. There's nobody really competing in this space from the United States. And we wanted to bring something that had all the flexibility and creativity and improvisational and customizable and personalizableness. We wanted to bring something to the market that had everything that America is kind of known for. Our personality, our kind of rock and roll attitude. You know, so many of us forget that this country was formed during a time where people didn't question the existing power so much because they had convinced everyone they had it straight from God and they were beyond questioning. To question them was to question God. If you question God, we could burn you at the stake. We forget that that was the face of the world. We forget that all men were enslaved. In 1750, and if you lived on planet Earth, you were a slave. They may not have called you a slave. You may have been a serf or a vassal, or you came and went with the land as it was passed from one nobleman to the next. And a small group of people ruled over everyone. And it wasn't white men. Most white men were slaves. A slave by any name, quite frankly. And some rabble-rousers over in the New World broke the mold. And when they declared that all men are created equal, and that we were endowed with inalienable human rights, it was a preface for a new way of thinking about humans that had never existed before. And the world watched with bated breath, and as it happened, and as the British were pressed out of here, and the French were pressed out of here, and the Spanish were pressed out of here, the old world was abandoned. And a new way of looking at the world happened. And it changed the world. What do you think the King of France thought when the rabble-rousers in North America liberated themselves from the King of England? What do you think the King of Spain was worried about? They were all worried about everything slipping out of their grasps. God, if any of them get freedom, all of them will want freedom. Can you imagine that conversation going on? And it happened. And you could see the reverberations of what happened in 1776 in North America. You can see it, the shock waves of it rippled around the world. It changed the world, it changed human history, and it raised the station of everyone. It raised the station of women. It raised the station of men. It raised the station of people of color. And it didn't get it all right the first signing in the first moment. There had a lot of people with a lot of ideas they brought together to build a coalition. And within less than a century, there was no benevolent king. There was no tyrannical liberator. There was no pope that came along and said it. In less than a century, all of us dirty fingernailed, scrappy rabble-rousers elevated and liberated everybody here equally. It had never happened before. It's pretty amazing. I thought it would be fitting to name one of the knives after one of the great minds of the New World, Thomas Jefferson. Fluent in French, and ancient Greek, and Latin, and English. George Washington, the father of the country, so well known around the world, and Jefferson so well known that the King of France had chamber pots painted with their faces so he could shit on them each morning. Jefferson said of Washington, said in any other time he'd have been worshipped a god amongst men. Not exaggerating. He said the only man in history who, in all probability, lived up to his legend. And he was a contemporary. When Washington spoke, rooms went silent and countries listened. He was a country farmer. We were all prisoners of our time, and some of us get to look out of our time, out of our prison to further ahead. Maybe we have a guy like that now. Maybe Elon Musk is one of those guys. It's not going to be Zuckerberg. It's not going to be Jing Deving Wanda from Google. It's the people that make things and do things, doers. I named the knives after those people. The kings of Europe, the courts of Europe ignored the young America after our liberty from England. They ignored us because we didn't have money, we didn't have power, and we didn't have influence. And our emissaries couldn't get meetings with anybody. We tried to borrow money so we could set up our new country, and they blew us off. Thomas Jefferson sent a flotilla of American ships to North Africa. We're having a problem with our ships going through, being taken by the pirates of Tripoli along the North African coast. Young sailors who had no radio, no phone line, no hotline, no sat line. They made the call. They raised a mercenary army. They seized cities. They waged war in Africa, and they ended piracy. They liberated thousands of captive Christian slaves who'd been enslaved for years, for centuries. The kings of Europe, instead of sticking up for their people's rights, they didn't care. They just paid a check. They paid a homage to the pirates of North Africa. That was standard business. And when we won the Revolutionary War and we were liberated, we were no longer protected by the British crown. And we couldn't fly under British flag. And we were now subject to being taken captive. And they took some of our ships captive, and we sent over ships, and we built a little army, and we fucking killed the guys who took prisoners, and we liberated the slaves. They were white European slaves. We liberated them, and while we liberated them, we liberated all the European slaves that were being held there. Sent them back to Europe. Mysteriously, within the year, all of our ambassadors would be received at court. We were able to do banking. We were able to get loans, and we were able to float funding our new country. And the kings of Europe no longer had to pay homage because a young lieutenant, Presley O'Bannon, one of the young first Marines, he negotiated no more homage paid by the United States. All money given back that we'd ever paid, and no more homage will be paid by Europe also. We showed up with capital of spirit. That's rare. So I thought it would be fitting for our adventurer knife to have this sense of adventure about it, to be colored in Corsair blue and be named after Ironside. Old Ironsides. USS Constitution. The last knife, the Alcaceae, is named after this White River Apache Indian scout named William Alcaceae, who got a Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was considered loyal, stalwart, and worthy of the nation's highest praise. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the knives. They'll trickle out to you over time, and as you see the production start to hit the streets, these will all deliver before those. You'll be the first ones on planet Earth to have them. Please be patient. Enjoy the ride. ASKknife.com. Go check it out. See what you think. I hope you enjoy it. It's been a grand adventure for us, and it's only just begun.